Hello, my name is Valerie Pearson and I am the author of Home Cheesemaking in Australia. I also helped co-found Green Living Australia back in 2004, and we basically supply things for people to be able to do things yourself at home. One of those things is making your own cheese. So what I'm doing for you today is I'm going to make a mozzarella. Now I have put 4 liters of beautiful full cream pasteurized but not homogenized milk in this pot, and I'm going to gently warm that up to 32 degrees. Now don't try to be in a hurry when you're doing this. If you're on a medium-low setting, that would be good enough. So once I have got my milk in the pot, I'm going to gently heat it, and I've got a couple of ingredients I'm going to be adding. Now there's a thermometer in the pot, so I can make sure I don't go above the 32 degrees that I'm aiming for. So the ingredients that I'm going to be adding is I need to make it a warm, calcium-rich, acidic environment to make cheese. So warming it to 32 degrees, I need to add an ingredient called calcium chloride. And when I do that, I'm going to dilute it in a bit of water. So I've got some water here. I make sure the water's not chlorinated. I don't want to put any chlorine in my cheese. And I'm going to put just 1/8 of a teaspoon of the calcium chloride into the milk. Now, most of you won't have heard of calcium chloride, but what you're doing is you're fortifying the milk with extra calcium, which helps you get a good curd when you're making cheese and also making yogurt. So just 1/8 of a teaspoon, and go ahead and swirl that around in the cup with the water and tip that in. And then go ahead and stir that in. So you're on your way to warm. You now got calcium rich, but you need to also make it acidic. So I'm going to get the next ingredient, which is citric acid. All of these ingredients come with the cheese kit, the 30-minute mozzarella kit from Green Living Australia. So it's very easy to just get that kit and you know you have everything you need. So I'm going to measure out 1.5 teaspoons of citric acid. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water to that. I realize I've used the half instead of the quarter, so I just need to do that again. Stir that in. So now I've got 1.5 using the wrong measurements. And tip that in. Stir that in. So now I've got 1.5 teaspoons of citric acid in there. Once it gets to 32 degrees, I'm ready to add my next ingredient, which is rennet. Now, rennet is an enzyme that helps the milk coagulate into a curd to give you what you need to take that curd and turn it into a cheese. So we'll put our citric acid away, put our calcium chloride away, and the next ingredient we're going to be mixing up is our liquid rennet. So you're going to dilute this once again in about 1/4 cup of water. So you're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of this one. This also comes in the kit. So mix that in with your water, and now you are ready to put that in, but you don't actually put it in until it gets to 32 degrees. So this hasn't been in here very long, and it's already 25, 26 degrees, so it really won't take a long time to get to your 32 degrees. All right, so we're coming up to that 32 degrees now, so we're going to go ahead and mix in our liquid rennet solution, diluted in 1/4 cup of water. So go ahead and tip that in. And then mix that in. Now, every recipe in my book tells you what to do, when to do it, how long to do it for, and at what temperature to do it. So this one tells you to add the liquid rennet in when it is 32 degrees, and then it tells you to stir it in for 30 seconds. Other recipes might say 1 minute. Some might say 2 minutes. There's a reason for every single one of those. The reason you're only going to mix for 30 seconds for this one is that it'll actually start setting into a curd in about 5 minutes. So we're going to stir it for 30 seconds, then get the spoon and the thermometer out, and we are going to let it set for 5 minutes. Okay, that's enough stirring. Get the spoon out. Double checking the temperature. Yeah, we're happy with that. It's at 30 degrees. So we're going to turn off the pot. Now this is an induction hot plate, so I don't have to remove it from the heat. I can literally just turn it off and leave it sitting on this plate. If you are using an electric stove, obviously you need to move it off the heat as well, because that hot plate is going to continue heating it, and it's going to be quite higher than 32 by the time it gets to that 5 minutes. So go ahead and turn it off. Take your thermometer out, and then have a kitchen timer or something where you can time 5 minutes, or just check your watch and make sure that you come back to this in 5 minutes. Good idea to put something on with a buzzer so you don't go and get distracted and forget that you put this on 5 minutes ago. So we're going to wait 5 minutes, and when we come back, we are going to be ready to go on to the next step of our cheese making. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. What we're going to do now is check to see if it is ready to go to the next step. Now, this is called checking for a clean break. So after you have done what you need to do in a cheese recipe to make a curd, you need to make sure that it actually did work. It normally does. The only time it doesn't is when you forget to put one of the ingredients in because you're in a hurry. And rennet sometimes doesn't act quite as fast on a really cold day. So not a problem for a lot of Australia, but if you do live somewhere where it gets quite cold in winter, for example, some areas in the Highlands, Tasmania, and I'm in Stanthorpe, just outside of Brisbane area, but it is quite a high elevation, so it gets cold, so it takes a little longer. So we're going to get a knife and we're going to make a small incision in the surface of the curd to see if it sets. So this is a curd knife. It's got a nice rounded end, not sharp, but slips through the curd really easily. Make a slit in the curd and then slide the knife underneath and give it a gentle lift. What you want to see is you want to see it split open or cleave open, and it's called a clean break because that cut in it looks quite clean. And when the liquid fills the space that you have just made, it will be a clear, translucent, yellowy color, maybe with a touch of green if the cows have been into the clover. If it looks milky, then it is not ready and you need to give it a few more minutes. This one is ready. I'm quite happy with it. So now we're going on to the next step, which is to cut the curd. So you take your curd knife and you put the curd knife in all the way down to the bottom of the pot and drag it all the way across. And then you need to make these cuts about 1.5 to 2 centimeters apart. So just pick a line next to it, 1.5 to 2 centimeters away, and cut it again. Do this all the way across the pot. You're basically cutting it into 1.5 to 2 centimeter slabs. Once you have done that, cut across those cuts so you are making a checkered pattern. Once again, 1.5 to 2 centimeters away. Now this curd has formed a solid mass, and it is so solid that as I am cutting it, it is trying to spin around the pot. So I'm kind of chasing it around the pot. You also need to cut it this way. Now that's a bit difficult in a round pot. So what you need to do is you need to do it on an angle. So you can just cut it across and then across, and just keep dropping down 1.5 to 2 centimeters and zigzag your way across the pot. And do the same the other direction, because once you start getting close to the side, you're no longer cutting. And then a few this way and a few this way. And now what you have is, well, what you have really is very dodgy looking cubes. They're a cross between a cube and a triangle, but what you're doing is you're increasing the surface area so more liquid comes out. So we have warmed it, we have put some ingredients in it, and then we have a curd, and we've cut the curd. Now we're going to heat it, so turn your temperature back on, not too high once again. Put your thermometer back in, and go ahead and gently stir it until it gets to 40 degrees. Now when we put the rennet solution in, it was 32 degrees, so we're not increasing the temperature a lot, just another 8 degrees to get to 40 degrees. Gently move the curds around the pot while you're doing this. Don't be rough with the curds. You will shatter them into very, very small pieces, and then you won't really get a lot of cheese. The next step after this, you're actually going to separate the curd from the whey. And if you are rough with your curd, what's going to happen is that the pieces of curd will be so small that they break down into a thing that cheesemakers call fines. It literally means pieces of curd that are so fine, so small, that when you do the step of separating the curd from the whey, those fines leave with the whey. So you're beating your curd into little pieces and then throwing it down the drain. So be nice and gentle, move it around the pot until it gets to 40 degrees. This is going to take a couple of minutes. It's already 34, so it won't really take that long, but we'll be back with you when we get to 40. Just keep stirring gently. Okay, so we've just come up to 40 degrees, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to turn the heat off. Once again, I'm using an induction, so I don't need to move it off the plate. Now, at this point, you have a choice. You can stir no more at all and go on to the next step. You'll get quite a soft mozzarella. Or you can stir for another minute or two to be a little bit firmer. If you wanted it much firmer, you could stir it for several more minutes. So it's going to depend on your personal taste, and it might take you 2 or 3 times of making mozzarella to work out which style of mozzarella you're going to enjoy making in your home. So I'm just going to move this now off the plate and get the plate out of my way because I don't need it anymore. And we will go on to the next step. The next step is to scoop the curds out of your pot into a bowl, leaving as much of the whey in the pot as you can. Now, everything I use in cheese making is one-piece stainless steel. I don't use things with wooden or plastic handles. If anyone's ever had things in their kitchen that had wooden or plastic handles and they had one break, the handle come off, you probably saw what was up inside that handle and it wasn't very pretty. There's lots of bacteria and things that can grow in those areas because you can't ever really clean them properly. So I try to use commercial grade one-piece stainless steel things for all of my cheese making, for most of my cooking in fact, but definitely for my cheese making. So I'm not saying get rid of your favorite implements, but maybe you should think about getting some commercial grade one-piece stainless steel just for your cheese making. So just keep scooping until you've got all the curds out. They tend to hide. Sometimes they float to the top. Sometimes they sink to the bottom. Just keep scooping. One thing about cheese making, I'm never in a hurry. Okay, I've got all the curds out now. So I'm ready to go on to the next step. Now, when we were doing this, what has happened is the curds have been put on top of the curds, and it's actually pushed more whey out of the curds as we've done this. So I'm just putting a bit of hand sanitizer on, a food grade hand sanitizer, so I can just use my hands to hold the curd in the bowl where I tip off some of that excess whey that was pushed out of the curd when I started stacking it on top of each other. Now, I'm going to put this in the microwave for 1 minute. That's going to get it hot, make more whey come out of it. And it's going to be pressing the whey out with our hands. So the heat will make some whey come out, but pressing the curds with our hands will also make more whey come out. So this is a filo pasta cheese. There are several ways of pressing curds to get the whey out of them. Sometimes you just stack the curds on top of each other, kind of like we did when we put it in the bowl. Other times you actually put them in baskets that shape them either into squares or round baskets. There's all kinds of cheese baskets and molds you can get, and sometimes you put weight on top of them. But with this one, you actually knead it like a phyllo pastry and push and stretch all the excess whey out of it until it's the consistency that you want. So the first time in the microwave is 1 minute. It gets hot, but not too hot. We're aiming for 60. As it starts to cool down, we're going to put it in the microwave again. The second and any other time after that is just 30 seconds. So you'll see that more whey has come out just because we warmed it up. So we'll tip that whey off. And it's hot, but not as hot as we want it. We might need to put this back in 1 or 2 more times. So then put your hands in and just pick up the edge and flip it over itself and push it down. Give it a turn, pick up the edge, flip it over itself and put it down. Now, the better you get at this, the faster you'll do it. And you can see the whey is being pushed out of the curds as we're doing this. So every now and then, you just pick up the bowl and tip off that excess whey back into the pot. You can do this by your sink. You can put down a cutting board, preferably a glass cutting board, on the draining area. And you can do this on there. And then, of course, the liquid will run off the board onto your draining area, and then it should gravity feed into your sink. You'll notice the whey is looking quite creamy now, so there is some butter fat coming out as well. So if I tip that into the pot with all the whey that is still in the pot, I'm going to have 3+ liters of whey. Whey can be used in cooking. It has lots of protein. So put this back in the microwave, this time for 30 seconds. And when it comes out, it's going to be even hotter. In fact, it could be so hot that you might have a little difficulty kneading this with your hands. And if that is the case, go ahead and wear some gloves. There are food-grade gloves that you can pick up in most grocery stores now. They're not very thick, but they give your hands that little bit of extra protection that you need to be able to knead the whey out of the cheese without burning your hands. The other thing, of course, is you're moving fairly fast as well. So it's a bit like playing hot potato. Oh, this feels so good already. Just take the curd and fold it over and fold it over. Just keep bringing it into the middle and folding it. Every now and then, tip off the excess whey into the pot. Now, if you think it's ready, you need to do what's called a stretch test, which is literally picking the curd up and stretching it. If it breaks, it's not ready. If it stretches beautifully, then it is ready. So we're going to do the stretch test now, and that's probably the hardest thing to do as far as your hands tolerating the heat. When your hands are constantly moving, handling the curd, it's not so bad. When you have to hold the curd in your hand and it's quite hot, this is where you might need gloves, okay? I've been doing this for 35 years. I don't think I need gloves anymore at this point. But look at this cheese. That is stretching absolutely beautifully. I am so happy with this mozzarella. I am not going to have to do any more kneading or stretching. I'm just going to just tip off that last little bit of extra whey. And I'm going to put in my final ingredient. My final ingredient is some salt. So if you think back to the beginning of the recipe, one of the first things that we put in was citric acid. And that makes it acidic enough for you to get a curd. But when you do that, you need to then rebalance the flavor with some salt at the end. So think about your flavor profiles. You've got sweet, sour, and salty. So this has got milk sugars in, so it's got that sweetness. It also now has citric acid in it, so it's got the sourness. So we need to balance that with a bit of salt. Depending on what kind of milk you used will determine the amount of salt. I like to put half a teaspoon of salt in when I'm using the milk that we use today, which is scenic rim milk because of the type of cows that are on that dairy. So start kneading that salt in. Now what's happened is while we were getting the salt, it kind of cooled down a little bit. So I am actually going to pop it in the microwave just for 10 or 15 seconds to get it to warm up again so I can melt that salt. So let's go 15 seconds. I just want to get that salt to really mix in with that mozzarella beautifully. So I'll move these things out of the way. So when we're done with this last little thing of putting the salt in, we're actually ready to put it on the plate. Great, that's warmed it up just a little bit, and now I can mix the salt in. Now what happens when you get the salt mixed in is some more whey comes out. Salt's been used as a dehydrating agent for thousands of years. So it is perfectly logical for some more whey to come out as the salt is absorbed into the curd. Okay, just tip off that bit of excess whey again. And now that it is ready. Now I'm going to just wash that salty whey that's coming out off the outside of that cheese and pop it on a plate. There we go. A beautiful bowl of mozzarella. You can drop that in some ice water and it will hold its shape. If you leave it warm, it will actually eventually spread out over the plate. You can break off pieces and just drop them on a pizza. You can roll it out with a rolling pin and put pesto all over it and then roll it up. There are so many things that you could do with this. Of course, one of the things that you can do with it is just eat it. Let's see if I can get a little piece off. Oh, it's so stretchy. I'm not sure it's going to let me get a little piece off. Let me get a knife. See if I can just cut a little piece. I wish you could taste this with me because it is just so beautiful. I'm really happy with that. It's not too firm, not too soft, perfect to go on a pizza. And I think that's what we're going to have for dinner tonight. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can contact Green Living Australia. They're on the line. You can get their phone number and give them a call. And if you want more recipes, get the book Home Cheese Making in Australia. Thank you very much.